Hello, everybody. This is the former farm kid coming to you, and today we're just doing a short clip on our organic sweet corn field. It's something we try to do every year, and we take a small portion of the field and turn it over to our organic farming. And this year we've got a quarter acre of sweet corn. So as far as sweet corn goes, there's basically two varieties, and the first and most popular, probably inexpensive, is the Roundup Ready sweet corn. Roundup Ready sweet corn can be sprayed for weeds with Roundup, but number one, it is more expensive, and number two, this field is for donation. So when we donate a product to the local community, we like to believe that we're giving them the absolute best we have. And in that respect, we feel that being organic and untreated with Roundup is probably the way to go. So that basically makes it organic. There are issues with doing that. Primarily, as you can kind of see here in the field, the major issue are the weeds. Since we are not treating them chemically, we have to do something with them. Otherwise, they would just literally take over the field. And weeds being weeds, they seem to be able to grow without water and even without sunlight. So right now, we are in northern Illinois here, in the midst of a quasi-drought. We have now gone, this will be at the end of this week, 4 weeks with only about 5/100ths of an inch of rain. So cultivating under those circumstances for weeds is really not a good idea. And I have listened to some of the Minnesota farmers, which really seem to know about these things, and they say that for every pass you make through your field with a cultivator costs you a half an inch of rain. And what does that mean? Well, it's because you're digging up moist soil and you're bringing subsurface to the subsurface dry soils, which are closer to the roots. And because we are in a drought right now, the roots basically are growing straight down because that is the only place where there's currently any moisture. So having said that, you still have to deal with the weeds because, like I said, they pretty much grow with no rain and no sun. So how do you do that? Well, we need to cultivate still, so we set our cultivator so that it only penetrates approximately 1 inch to 2 inches. And in that 1 to 2 inches, there is basically no moisture. So turning that soil up and bringing it to the surface, you haven't really changed the equilibrium of moisture content in the field. So what we have done here on the earlier corn, and I didn't mention this, but as you can see, there's basically 4 different levels of corn height here. This corn right in this area is the latest. This is the second latest. Third latest are the next 6, and the final 6 rows on that side are the earliest corn. It was planted the second weekend in April, and believe it or not, experienced 4 frosts on it, but it has successfully weathered those events. We did have to go through and clip some damaged leaves, but as far as we could tell, there was only one plant that failed because of frost damage. However, it was in the ground an inordinate amount of time. It took almost 2.5 weeks because it was so cold for that corn to emerge. So even though it is 76-day corn, it's hard to say when that corn is going to actually be ready. There's a good chance that it will be on schedule. We're hoping so, 76 days, but we will see. So at any rate, our third planting, these four rows right here are going to need to be cultivated. As you can see, the weeds are starting to emerge, more than emerge actually. They're growing quite well with no rain whatsoever. Have they been stunted a bit? Yeah, they certainly have, but the corn is looking pretty good. So we need to get in with a cultivator, set very carefully so that we do not go deeper than 2 inches and knock these out. The problem with only going 2 inches is that you're not necessarily going to be underneath the roots. So it does require us to go back by hand and kind of, with a hoe, take care of the ones that the cultivator was not able to deal with. At any rate, we have an extra shovel in every row so that even if the roots do not be taken out, it strips the leaves from the plant, doesn't leave a whole lot above the surface. And with these kind of temperatures and lack of rain, it more or less does kill the field. So it has been pretty successful on our first pass, and you can see basically the dirt is not very deep. Not very deep at all. That's solid there. So we've got a good 2 inches of loose dirt on top. This was the wheel track here, so it didn't dig nearly even as deep in this row. But as you can see, we have remnants of weeds laying in the field. Their roots may still be there. Could they come back? Sure. But for right now, they're not harming the corn at all. And you just cannot leave weeds in your field. They absolutely stunt the growth of sweet corn. Sweet corn seems to be a little bit more sensitive to weed growth than field corn. And we'll walk up to the other end here, and as I do that, I will say that in the next couple of videos we're going to show our irrigation method using a water tote, which kind of is a science all of its own. They're made over in the UK, and it becomes a little difficult to use them because of the adapters that it takes to bring water out of them and put water into them. We'll also do a review on the pumping system we use, and then the irrigation system we use here as well. We're also going to do a piece on, as you've seen already, the fencing we have and how we have it set up, and the specifics to it, and also how we basically then, hopefully in effect, keep the deer. And we're shooting for raccoons this year as well, and I don't mean that literally. We're going to try to keep the raccoons out as well. They don't do quite the amount of damage as the deer do. In some respects, they're kind of like clean up the mess that the deer make. Deer have a tendency to knock that ear down to nibble on the top and kind of leave the deer, the the ear dangling, and then the raccoons, just being the opportunistic animals that they are, just kind of come through and take what's left. So this year, though, we're hoping to absolutely keep all the deer out of the field, and that is the goal. And we're going to have a short video on that, how we do it, and we will probably do it the next one or next video or next video after that. And if I didn't mention it, it's a 1/4 of an acre. We planted just under 7,500 plants. We plant 6 inches apart, and you can see it's an older planter. It's actually a custom-made 2-row planter. We may do just a short piece on it as well. So in essence, what it takes to do a job like this is basically a tractor. It takes a disc, it takes a cultivator, it takes a planter. And when I say cultivator, guys up north call those diggers. What we call cultivators here are what goes through the corn, like I was talking about earlier, and knock the weeds out. Down here in northern Illinois, we call those cultivators. So it takes one of those as well. My planter is a 2-row. I started out with a 4-row. 4-row is fine. It's just a little easier to deal with 2 rows at a time. And I'm not going to say it's easier to cultivate 2 rows at a time. My cultivator is a 2-row as well. All these things started out as 6-row implements, and we just cut the cultivator down to 2 because that's where our planter came. There's a guy that we bought the planter from. He takes 8, 12-row and larger planters, puts a conversion kit on them, and turns them into a much smaller planter. Our planter got delivered actually in the back of a pickup truck, and it mounts 3-point hitch on the back of our tractor. Our tractor is a John Deere 4230, which is more than what something like this operation requires. We just couldn't find something smaller that was going to do what we needed to do. And in retrospect, it has turned out to be a real blessing having a bigger tractor, because the way we are now irrigating requires the use of water tote, and with a water tote, it's got to be carried somehow. So we have rigged up a system where we can carry it on the back of a tractor, and it works really well. And again, we'll be going into that at a later date, as well as how we electrify the field, protect it from critters, and how our irrigation is set up as well. So that's pretty much it for the layout of the land. We'll kind of give updates, show the field as it progresses, any other issues we have. And by the way, Organic Field has another problem too, and that's with the ear borers. They're basically the worms that come later in the season, and how we deal basically with those is we check every year for worms, and if we end up with worms on the tip, we just snip the ends. And you'll see those in stores set up that way as well. There are ways to prevent them in the field, but it's very, very labor intensive. And on a field this size, it's pretty hard to do. So we just live with them. They're not in every ear. It depends on the time of the season. It depends on how much old corn is still in the field. Those type of things all have impact on the amount of worms you're going to have. So outside of that, thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you on the next one.